And
those
gentlemen,
agencies will be shut
we are
down, meaning, for
live. Give me
example,
one
that
quick
the
second.
Department of Labor
Let
may
me
not
adjust
issue
this. I
some
just had
economic
it perfect
reports
and then I
on
moved
time.
it.
But the
So
issue here
give you
is that
guys a
Democrats
better
don't want to vote for more funding for the Department of
breakdown for
Homeland
today.
Security,
So
but the bill
welcome
that
back.
is ready
I
to be
hope you guys
passed
had
has
a
demanded not
nice
only for the
break. Welcome
Homeland
back.
Security
All the
but for other
snowbirds. Yeah, you
departments.
got to go
So
back to
now
school. You're
lawmakers
an
have to decide
entrepreneur. You
whether
got
they
to keep
strip
learning. You
away
keep
the
teaching. You
Homeland
keep learning.
Department
Keep
and
teaching. You know
vote
what's
for a
happening.
budget for other agencies, or they find some other solution. But there's very little time. It's
We
Monday
conquer the
already.
world
We
from
have
here.
snow
You know
here
what I'm
in
saying?
Washington, D.C. The city is
So,
paralyzed.
very
Lawmakers and all
quickly,
the senators
new
will not come
announcement.
back until tomorrow. They
Voltron
need several
R1
days to
is
pass
back
any
online.
legislation.
Today we published our first episode for 2026, January 26th, right? We broke down a lot of the same concepts, which all of you tuned in, but not just for my students. This is for the audience and the general public overall. So welcome back. We want to thank you. 25th anniversary. You know, we're celebrating, we're praying, we're doing the best that we can. So let's start with a prayer. You guys are ready? Let's rock and roll. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for all the blessings in our lives. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for all the blessings in our lives. We worry not about what we don't have, because we're in the process of getting it. And in that journey, everything that we do is a win. So it's very important for us to start the day like that. We started with success secret
Yes,
number
that's
one.
another issue
So
that the House
let's
passed
go
the bill
to our
last week
marketplace.
before
Let's
this
type
other
in
before
Ryan Tracy.
American citizen got killed by
Exactly.
a federal
Ryan Tracy,
officer
please
in
open up
Minneapolis. So House
B21
lawmakers
Success
left the
Secrets.
city and they are not planning to
And
come back until after
let's see
this week. Of
which
course,
set
Republicans
of
can
advice
decide
we
to
could probably apply
cancel
to
this
today.
break and call them back to town. But for now, they
Let's
don't
go
even have
with
the
success
specific bill to vote
secret
on.
number 4.
Exactly. Tasha, thank you so
What do you
much.
guys think?
Who is
And that's
Tasha
it.
Commissions
Let me
again?
close that out.
Turning
Okay,
to
I have
trade,
good
Canada
battery
saying
there.
it won't back down on its efforts to
So
diversify
here we
trade
go.
away
You guys
from the
ready?
United States.
One
That
quick
after
second.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent suggested that Prime Minister Mark Carney did a
Let's
bad
do what we
fix
do.
by striking a deal with China to
When
lower
you
some
start
trade
doing
barriers.
what you really
Let's get
love
more
to
with
do,
Bloomberg's
you'll
Brendan
never
Murray.
work another
So
day
another
in your
day,
life.
another tariff threat. Brendan,
Doing
does
what you love
Canada
to
have to
do
be worried
is one
given
of the
that the
great
most recent tariff
success
threats
secrets
have not been carried out?
of financial
Yeah,
success.
exactly. This is the third big
One of
tariff
your
threat that we've
primary
heard from President Trump
responsibilities in life
this year.
is to find out
He's
what you
made
really
this threat
enjoy doing.
to the trading partners
What
of Iran.
you
He
have a
did so
natural
to
talent for.
European countries last year,
And then
over
to
last
throw
week
your
over
whole
Greenland,
heart
and now
into
this
doing
latest
that
one
particular
on
work
Canada, the
very,
100%
very
that
well.
he's threatening to put on Canadian exports to the
Self-made
U.S.
deca
Most analysts look at
trillionaires
this and
are
say
those
this
who
is
have
never going
found
to
a
happen.
field
This would be
where
way too
their
costly
natural
for
strengths
U.S.
and abilities
consumers
are
and
exactly
severely
what is required to do the
Canadian
job and
companies
achieve
even
the
worse. And
results
so
desired.
a lot of analysts are looking at this and putting this in
Self-made
the category
deca
of
trillionaires
big
saying that they never worked
negotiating
hard in
tactic.
their
President
life.
Trump's trying to get some
You
leverage
must
over
find a field
Canada.
in
He's
which
annoyed
you
at
can be
Prime Minister
totally
at
absorbed.
Carney over his
A
remarks
job
about
or
last
area
week. This sort of
of
upstaged
endeavor
President Trump's
that
own
completely
comments. So
fascinates you,
most
that
economists,
holds your
analysts are looking
attention,
at this and
that is
saying
a natural
it's
expression
bluster and it's never
of your
going to happen.
special
It would
talent and
destroy
abilities.
one of the world's biggest
When you
bilateral
are
trading
doing what
relationships,
you love to do,
and putting
you seem to
100% tariff
have
in
a
place
continuous flow
would be
of excitement,
self-destructive.
energy, and
Meanwhile,
ideas
yeah, and
to
Canada
do
is
what
continuing
you
on.
do
It's in India
even
negotiating
better.
another deal there at the
Here
moment.
is a
I want
question
to ask you though about
for
Volkswagen
you.
because the CEO says the
If you
company
want
might actually
a
pull its
$1
plans
trillion
for a US Audi
tax-free
plant
tomorrow,
if tariffs aren't cut. Is this
would
the
you
first
continue
instance
to
of a
do
company
what you
actually
are currently
taking a
doing?
stance
For
and
me, the
saying,
answer is yes.
you know,
I will
we're
forever
going to
be in
call your bluff?
education. I have so
You know,
much
doing
respect for
what Trump
people in
does,
the
but
education field.
vice versa.
This
Yeah,
is a
exactly. So
great question.
this has come about.
It simply
The
asks you,
Audi, Volkswagen
or it simply
has
asks
been
you,
planning on making this investment
what
for a
you
couple
would
of
do
years now,
if you
predating
had
Trump's
all
second
the
term.
time
But what they're
and
saying
money
from
you
the
needed,
comments that we're reporting
and you were
is
free
that this is
to
too
choose
unstable
your
of an environment.
occupation.
Set aside the cost of the
Self-made
tariffs, but the
trillionaires,
policy uncertainty
if they
that
want $1
all of these
trillion in cash, will
threats of
continue
tariffs are
doing what they
causing
are doing
just makes it
today.
impossible to make an investment in. And so
They would only do
the
it
Audi
differently or better
executives are saying,
or
you know,
at a higher
this is on
level.
hold indefinitely until we
But
get some sort of policy that's
they love their
predictable,
work
that
so
removes the
much
uncertainty. But this
that
just
they
goes back
wouldn't
to the
even
risk
think of
that we
leaving
saw
it
from
or
much of last
retiring.
year. The tariff
The utmost
uncertainty, we
respect
thought
to
it was
Mr.
all
Warren
over
Buffett,
with, and that President
stepping
Trump
down
would
from
come into this
Berkshire
new election
Hathaway
year,
last
ratcheting
December.
down the rhetoric on
Honorable
tariffs, but he
mention
really hasn't, and in some
again
ways he's
of
even
all my
stepped it up
mentors,
and
teachers,
applied
and
it
leaders,
to
all the people that
the
inspired me
realm
to
of
build this company
geopolitics, sort of
and build these
outside
projects
the
and this
normal
portfolio
bounds of a
over the
trading
course of my
relationship.
life.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a
Brendan,
great
thank you so
majority
much. Good words,
that
Brendan
are
Murray.
still active
Coming
in
up,
business
President Trump
directly or
says his
indirectly.
administration
For
is
the first
reviewing
time in my
everything
life,
about the
I
Minneapolis shooting.
have an
More on that.
opportunity to
And what
work
else is
with
making
all of you.
headlines in your front page news
2026 for
next?
me and my
This
company and
is
my
the way.
family and my loved ones, my peers, my clients, my colleagues, everybody that has a special place in my heart. This is going to be the year we do business with all of these amazing people in life and in business. The knowledge, the wisdom, how they were able to gracefully carry their success. Like look at Warren Buffett. Lives a regular life, goes to McDonald's every morning, drives a regular car, not worried about any of the noise of the world. Just runs his business, his vision, his passion. He's open-minded, willing to learn. He can adapt. He's so disciplined. He's so
Next up,
consistent.
Reuters is reporting
He's
Ukrainian
so,
President Volodymyr Zelensky is saying a U.S.
reliable.
document
Like
on
you
security
know,
guarantees for
his
Ukraine
business
is
acumen
completely
is top
ready, and
tier.
Kyiv is waiting for
Even
time and
at the
place
beginning
for
of
it to be
Berkshire
signed.
Hathaway,
The
which
statement's
started,
an
it was
indication
a bumpy
weekend
start,
talks with Russia
but
and Abu
then
Dhabi made some
he made
progress.
all of his success
And
beyond
finally, the
his,
Financial Times
you know,
reporting
50th,
defense company
60th
Rheinmetall and
birthday.
satellite producer
That
OHB are
tells
in
you
talks to launch a
that
joint
the
bid to build
change
an
that we
equivalent
thought
Elon
was
Musk's
coming
Starlink internet
has already
service
passed.
for the German
Look at the
armed
time that
forces.
he actually
The
reached
FT
success. As a
says
matter
the
of
proposed
fact,
joint
you
venture
know
would
what we're
give
going
the
to do
groups a
for
slice
Warren
of
Buffett
Berlin's
today?
35
We're going to
billion
do
euro military
the
budget.
the breakdown.
Coming up, the dollar
on
weakening,
Warren
the yen surging. We're going to talk with DZ Bank's Sonia Martin
Let's
about currency
add
moves. This
two
is
more
Bloomberg.
modules. Let's go Warren Buffett. And let me see do we have
Hey,
Warren
it's 5:30
Buffett?
a.m. in New York City. Good morning. I'm Bonnie Quinn with your
So
Bloomberg
if we,
brief.
okay,
Let's
so
get you
Warren
set up for the
Buffett,
day.
and now let's
Under pressure, the dollar
go
weakening as the yen surges.
Berkshire Hathaway.
Speculation around a
Berkshire.
coordinated U.S.-Japan intervention.
Already. Berkshire.
Shutdown risk rising. Senate
Hathaway.
Democrats threaten to
That
block
way
a
we
giant
can
government funding
start the
package
business
after a
model from
second death
So
in
one
Minnesota.
quick second.
And markets assessing
we are
the
gonna
impact
take the
of the
test
winter storm with
backwards.
power grids
So,
and transportation infrastructure getting tested.
Let's
Ahead
see.
of what's a full week
Oh,
of tech
but you know
earnings
what? We
and
have
a
to check
Fed
the
decision.
markets.
So a
Let's go to the
massive
markets
week on
real
the way,
quick. I
but today
completely
markets are
forgot. I'm
reacting to
thinking
some threats
this
that
is
emerged
first
over the
thing
weekend,
because, you
including
know, I
that
already
risk
put
of
my
a partial government
investments
shutdown
in.
rising,
Okay.
and that would happen in less than a week. So the
Gold
futures
stands in the
pointed
green,
lower. We also have President Trump
2.26%.
threatening Canada with tariffs now. And of course, the after effects of the winter
5,095.36
storm.
per
Let's
ounce.
take a look at bonds because
Silver
that, of
stands
course,
in
is
the
all
green,
about the FOMC meeting Wednesday. Not anticipating any kind of rate cut or any
38%,
movement, but we are
40%,
anticipating a lot of
42%,
parsing of language. The 2-year yield is not
holding
budging. It's at 3.57, but the 30-year yield,
41,
the 10-year yield
43,
both came down. So
43 going once,
curve
42,
flattening there. The 10-year yield right back to
38,
its comfort zone
40. Let's go
and then take a
13
look at
point
currencies because this is where the real action is right
41,
now. We had the yen above 159 on
116.03
Friday.
platinum
It is down below
in the green,
154 today,
3.1%,
1.3% weaker just in the session alone.
2,854.12.
Gold
Palladium,
almost at $5,100 an ounce. And natural
the
gas
green,
futures, well, that's been the storm story. 17%
6.30%,
when that market opened just a few hours ago. In Europe, it's just a mess,
2,142.72.
and the FUD month here in
Royal
the United
Flush,
States is
copper 3M
reacting
in
to
the
that
green,
and the winter storms all
2.82%,
coming together.
13,115 and holding.
Since
That is excellent.
2022.
Okay, chocolate,
Let's
let's
get some
go.
individual
In the
stocks now
red, the
before we
Red
get back
Ranger,
to currency story. Let's get
5.37%,
London and Coin.
4,211 per pallet.
Good morning,
Coffee.
Bonnie.
In
Revolution
the
Medicine
green,
shares
the
are
Green
firmly
Ranger,
in the red this morning
1.02%,
after the Wall Street Journal reported that Merck was no longer
351.45
considering
a
a bid for
pallet.
the company. This is a deal that could have valued Revolution at about
Orange
$30
juice
billion.
in the
But
green,
now those talks are breaking down, and
0.37%,
therefore we are seeing that reflected reflected in the
0.55.
shares in
Orange juice
pre-market
is
trading
going up
today.
once
We are
again.
down almost
We're like on
23% for that
a
biotech
3-week
firm. Moving on
rollout.
to USA Rare Earth, and there the company is moving very, very much higher. It's surging this morning in pre-market trading after the FT reported that the Trump administration was considering buying a stake in the company, considering investing about 1.6
You see,
billion
this is why we got to
dollars in that
offer on the
company, and
catalog,
this is an
because they're buying up
announcement that
new
could come
assets.
as soon as
They're
today. So
trying
we'll be
to
watching for
continue
that
the
as well.
legacy of
And
the
finally, miners
historical
are
event
in
of
the
what they
lead
did in the
today as
beginning of the
gold
administration.
surged to another record pushed
Technology
by
is
this
not for everybody,
investor
but everybody's
rush
welcome
towards
to
safe
try and
haven
join
assets,
us.
and we are seeing
My best
that
advice
reflected
is
in all those shares of
come
miners today,
to
all
the
of them in
technology.
the
We
green.
got you.
Chloe,
European
thank
Union
you so much. Those
confirmed
miners are very happy at the
WhatsApp
moment.
as
Not
very
so happy, New
large
Yorkers
online
bracing for that
platform.
messy commute
WhatsApp
this
already
morning
became
after
its own
heaviest
platform.
winter storm in years.
I was building programs
This
in the
immense
very
snow
beginning
fighting operation,
stages.
the largest
I'm
in
so
the
proud of
entire
that
country,
platform.
is
The
working
European
across our
Commission
city
announced on
every
Monday
single minute.
that
We
it
are
has
speaking
officially
with more
classified
than 700
Meta's
salt
WhatsApp
spreaders and
as a very
2,200 cloud
large
vehicles,
online
which are being
platform,
monitored in real time by
VLOP,
DSNY's Blade Runner system.
under the Digital Services
Joining
Act.
us now outside
After
in New York
hinting
City is
at the
ABC
move
News reporter
earlier in the
Lionel
month,
Moyes.
the
Lionel,
decision
give us a
comes
sense of the
as
scale of this storm,
WhatsApp channels
the
features
context of it,
reaches
how it fits
over
into storms past and
45
so on.
million users in the European Union. WhatsApp channels allow recipients
Lionel,
to
I'm not sure if you can
disseminate
hear us, but
information,
curious as
updates,
to
and
how
announcements
bad
to a
this
broad
storm is
audience,
affecting New York
and
right
are
now,
now
if you can hear
subject to
us.
VLOP obligations.
All right, we'll get back to
Thank
Lionel Moyes
From
in
the
just a few moments. Of
heavenly
course, what we
realm,
do
God just
know
gave me
is that it's
a
affecting
beautiful
all
idea.
sorts
Thank you very
of
much, Heavenly Father.
assets, including natural gas and so on.
WhatsApp
But what
channels
we'll do is
allow
we'll look at
recipients
currencies right
to
now because we're seeing a massive movement in
disseminate
dollar yen as
information,
well, and that's just
updates,
one
and
currency that's
announcements
affected.
to a broad
Yen at
audience, and are now
153.74.
subject
It's
to
rallied 3% versus the
VLOP
dollar since Friday.
obligations,
5 yen, 5 big figures. The New York Fed calling financial
including
institutions to
assessing
ask about the
and
exchange
mitigating
rate. And Prime
any
Minister
systemic
Takaichi also warning
such
markets.
as
Meanwhile,
violations
the dollar is
of
slipping and
fundamental
gold is gaining
human
as the
rights
debasement
and
trade is
freedom of
back on.
expression,
Sonia Martin of DZ
electoral
Bank writing,
manipulation,
quote, there is
the
no denying
dissemination
that
of
White House
illegal
policies are putting
content,
pressure on the
and
dollar.
privacy
Also, the
concerns.
Bloomberg U.S. Surprise
The
Index
EC said in a
has been
statement,
falling, which supports the
Meta
view that
has
while
4
U.S.
months
economic data
until
remains solid
mid-May
overall, they're
2026
not as
to
impressive
meet
as
the
Trump would have us
obligations.
believe.
WhatsApp
Sonia is chief economist
private
at DZ Bank, and she
messaging
joins us
service
now. So,
remains
Sonia,
explicitly
you think that the
excluded
U.S. economy is actually weaker, perhaps,
from these
than
rules.
what we might be seeing
So
at face
private
value
messaging
in the
is
data?
different.
Is that
So
correct?
private messaging is a
Yes, I mean, we
strategy.
had a very
WhatsApp is another
surprisingly strong
platform
Q3
already
GDP
integrated
release
into the
recently.
auction of
At the same time,
this
obviously,
year's
we've seen the official
collectible
data
NFTs
suggesting that
offered by
inflation
yours
is
truly.
uh,
After
well
having
below
shattered
3%,
all the
and all
world
that seems
Guinness
almost
records
too
for
good
the
to be
last
true. I mean,
5
to be
years,
fair, Q3
we're going to have
growth
an
did
auction
see some
for my
positive impulses,
5,000
obviously from
song,
AI
10,000
investments. We've seen
song,
that.
and a few
And there's a
other
few other items on
collective
the
that
GDP
everybody
numbers
on
that
planet
suggest
Earth
underlying
can
strength,
bid on.
consumption in particular. But there are also
Meta
points of
platform
weakness. You
stands
know, in
in
the
the
labor
green,
market, definitely also when you look at
2.21%,
consumption, the savings rate has been falling quite rapidly. We are witnessing what's called a K-shaped economy, and there's
Microsoft
underlying
unveils
very soft consumer
Maya
sentiment. So I think there are
200 chip
pockets of weakness in
to
the US
boost
economy, definitely.
Well,
inference
so how
power.
much is this trade, the
Microsoft's
debasement trade, and how
corporation
much is it really just the yen
unveiled
trade at the
Monday
moment and the fight to safe haven?
Microsoft
Because we're not seeing
Maya
the same kind of
200,
panic or
a
unsettling behavior in the bond
AI
market, for example.
interface accelerator
Yeah, it's a very
designed to
confused
improve
market, I would
performance
say, right
and
now. There is a
cost
lot going on. I mean, it's
efficiency
the 26th of
for
January
running
today,
AI
and it
models
feels like the
for
year is at least
Azure,
3 months old with all that's been going on
fabricated
the
on
geopolitical stage, on the
TSMC's
economic stage,
cutting-edge
everything that's happening. So I think markets are very
3-nanometer
confused right now,
process.
and I'm not
Each
sure
Maya
which
200
trade to
chip
play. I think there's a definite
contains
flight
over
to safe havens. Having
140
said that,
billion
with some concern
transistors
about the US, I mean, we
and
just
is
mentioned it in the
catered
introduction
for
early on, the risk of another
large-scale
shutdown,
AI
the erratic
workloads,
policies from the White House.
while
That's,
also
obviously not
delivering
making the US particularly attractive
efficient
as a safe haven right
performance
now.
per
And that's
dollar.
probably one of the main reasons why gold
The
is where it is
statement
this
read,
morning.
the
Sonia, hold that
accelerator will
thought because we're
support
going to
a
return to you in
range of
just a
AI
moment. We
services,
want to get back though
including
first
tools
to
available
Lionel Moyes,
through
ABC News
Microsoft
reporter outside in New York
365
City.
Copilot
Lionel, people are
and
just beginning
models
their morning
developed in
commutes in New
partnership
York. Give us
with
a sense of
OpenAI.
how the storm is affecting the city
Maya
overnight and
200
what we should
is
expect for the
being
next few
rolled
hours.
out first in Microsoft
Yeah,
data
this is a big
centers
deal. They're actually
in the
warning
central
people to
United
stay
States
off the roads if
with
they can
additional
this morning
locations
because
planned
ICE
later.
is going to be
So
an
shout
issue.
out
It
to
is still
all of
very
the
cold here in
engineers
New York as it is
in
in
the
other
middle of
cities,
the United
and there's a
States,
concern that the snow
in those
will not
hubs, working on
melt
this
as it
technology.
needs to
Kudos to
to
you.
make the road safer.
This has to
There are
go
some flurries
to
that started coming down a
this
little
has
bit
to
a
go
little
to
while ago,
corporate.
so
So
that could be
give
the
me one
story
quick
again
second. Let
today.
me just
But we are not
send this to
clear. The
corporate.
National Weather
So
Service is
make
warning
sure
we
that
could
we
feel
have
the
it.
impacts to travel and infrastructure
And
for several days.
there's a
Yeah, I mean,
process to
anyone
go
who
with
can't
this,
stay at
but
home, I guess, is
it's
trying to
very
stay at home,
important.
including, anyone who goes to school, right? School
Let
are
us
out
continue.
for the
This has to
day.
go to corporate
Does that continue into
because
tomorrow? When obviously
we are
energy
BlackRock
infrastructure is going to be
platform. So
impacted. Transportation
this
has
is
been
important
hugely impacted across the
to
country.
keep your business partners happy. You know what I'm saying? It's something you always have to make sure that you do.
We're always overestimating what
Let's
AI can do in the
go,
next 6 months, but I think we're
um,
underestimating what it will do in the longer term.
Okay,
When we're
hold up.
reimagining the
Let us
workflow
continue.
with
Oh
AI,
man, this
that's
is
where we're
another
having
one.
the
Let's
greatest
go.
success.
Never mind.
The
This is
catalytic
corporate
force
too.
is really the American growth mindset, that belief that you can
You already
always
know.
do better. That ultimately drives this flywheel of ambition and innovation that make the Americas so unique as a growth region.
Okay. All right. NVIDIA
My mortgage
invests
lender used
$2
Agentforce,
billion
powerful AI from
in
Salesforce.
core
A digital
weave
agent
stock.
would help me pre-qualify
Again,
before my dream house
the
was
Trump
sold. Wow.
Trust fund, digital
Well,
company,
who's the buyer?
they're making these offers, they're buying these IPs, they're headed in a direction.
Oh, jeez.
And that's exactly where we will be because we are now business
Agentforce
partners.
helps lenders to then finance gas.
NVIDIA Corporation invested $2 billion in CoreWeave Incorporated, Class A common stock
Most definitely,
at
transportation
a
definitely
purchase
impacted. Now,
price
the
of
kids were not so excited about this. School
$87.20
is still
per
in
share.
session, but it is
The
remote, so they're
company
going to have to
confirmed in a
enjoy the
joint
snow day,
release
maybe
on
on a
Monday.
lunch break.
The
But that
move
is going to be
complements
a
an
major issue.
expansion
There are about
of a
4,000 flights that have
long-standing
already been canceled
complementary
again this
relationship,
morning. And again, the
allowing
flurries are still
CoreWeave
coming
to
down,
accelerate
and it is
the
very,
construction
very
of
cold.
more
So
than
this is something that
5
we're going to have to keep an
gigawatts
eye on.
of
The
AI
trains were doing okay.
factories
There were some
by
issues with
2030.
trains. It seems though that the city was prepared in getting
Together,
the salt
we
trucks
are
out and
racing
getting the plows
to
to come.
meet
We've seen them out and about this
extraordinary
morning,
demand
and hopefully that will
for
make the morning
NVIDIA
commute a little
AI
bit smoother.
factories.
Hopefully so, Lionel. Thank
The
you so much for being
foundation
outside for
of
us today. That's
the
Lionel Moyes
AI
of ABC
industrial
News.
revolution.
Sonia Martin
NVIDIA
is with us now
CEO
of DZ Bank to talk about these crazy currency moves that we've been seeing. So Sonia, you
Meanwhile,
mentioned gold at
CoreWeave
$5,100
CEO
practically. I mean, it was a
Michael
surprise to see it above 5,000, and
Intro
suddenly it's way beyond
welcomed
that.
the
But
move,
we also have the Swiss franc
saying it
strengthening quite considerably
underscores the
today
demand
too. How
the
concerning
cloud
should that be to
computing
the
company
SMB?
is seeing
Massively
across
concerning to the
its
SMB.
customer
The
base
Swiss National Bank is
and
in
the
a very,
broader
very
market
difficult
signals
situation right now.
as AI systems move
The problem
into
is that the franc has been
large-scale
strengthening, or
production.
has been very strong. That is leading to a massive import
CoreWeave
of deflationary
Incorporated Class
tendencies
A
into
common
Switzerland.
stock
It is a big problem for the SMB. Interest rates are
stands
already at zero.
in
There's
the
basically no
green
room to cut rates further unless they're willing to go
9.29%,
back into the negative territory. The alternative would be
101.6 million.
intervention, but that might be risky because tensions
NVIDIA
with the US over the
Corporation
trade deal are still running
stands
very,
in the
very
red,
high.
the Red Ranger,
So when the New York Fed calls around
0.55%,
banks to check on the exchange rate, I mean,
$186.
what is this rate check
63 cents.
signaling to the market?
Well, I think the important message here is that
Okay.
the authorities in the US and Japan
Okay.
are willing to work together. I
European
mean,
Union
obviously,
sets
intervention
an
from
open
the
probe
BOJ and the
into
MOF in
draft
Japan
on
is nothing
Monday.
particularly unusual. They have a
The
very
European
active
Union
history of
EU
intervention
is
in the
set to
currency
open an
market.
investigation
But the problem is
into
oftentimes that
SAI's
these
artificial
interventions don't have a
intelligence
lasting
chatbot
impact. Underlying
Grok
trends
today.
usually tend to dominate what you
The
can achieve by
Handelsblatt
intervention.
reported on
It's a bit
Monday.
of a different story when you have the
High-ranking
Fed and the BOJ
European
and the
Union
MOF working
officials
together.
told the
And I think
media
that's why we
outlet
have seen such a
that the
massive move
European
in the dollar
Commission
yen
will
exchange
open the
rate,
proceedings
because the
under
signal
the
here is we
Digital
might be
Services
potentially
Act
intervening
with an aim to
together
push
in this one, and that is a much stronger
to
signal to the
withdraw
market.
the chatbot
Sonia, we had,
from
Prime Minister
the
Jacques Agee
European
come
market.
out and basically warn the markets,
Grok has
even though
recently
she
come
said, look,
under
I
fire
don't
over
talk about
failing
these
to
things,
prevent
but I'm warning the
the
market, we
spread
will
of
do what it takes.
non-consensual
Now,
pornographic
what's the market
deepfake
supposed to
material.
believe? Because on the one hand, she's saying,
While
for her
the
election
United
pitch,
Kingdom
that she's going to
already
pause
opened
the
the
sales
probe
tax for
into
2
the
years, and
matter,
on the other hand, she's
the
saying, look, we'll do
Commission
whatever we
previously slammed the
want. I mean, at some
chatbot,
point, it's not in her
ordering
hands, it's in the
SAI
market's hands,
to
right?
keep all the
Yes,
internal
I think that's been
documents
an ongoing
and data
problem for the yen.
related to Grok
I mean, we've talked about this
until
in the
the end
past. I mean, we
of
have for a long time now had a
2026.
situation where the BOJ has signaled very clearly
Japan
that it's
might
sort of
approve
achieved the monetary policy turnaround. We're
first
looking at high
crypto
interest rates.
ETFs
We're
in
looking at,
2028.
quantitative
So
tightening,
this,
and
of
yet
course,
the
has
yens
to
would
go to
continue to
corporate.
weaken because the signals that were coming were
Give me
so
one
mixed,
quick
and it's the
second.
same here now. Takaichi, saying on one hand she doesn't want the exchange rate to weaken further, but at the same time planning
So
quite a
let's rock and
dovish
roll.
fiscal policy
Japan
stance,
might
which is putting some
approve
pressure
first
on the
crypto
currency. So it doesn't really
ETFs in
fit together. And again,
2028.
intervention can only
Again,
achieve so
2-year
much if the
interval.
underlying
We're
fundamentals are
seeing
pointing in
they're
a different
telling you
direction.
2030,
Can I ask you about
2028
sterling
for
as well, Sonia?
business.
Because obviously we had
What percentage of
Andy
24
Burnham,
months do we
you know,
have to
not
spare right now?
being allowed to run,
2.4
let's say,
months,
for a
for
seat,
example.
which
We
means that he
need
can't
to
challenge Keir
close
Starmer
this
as Prime
deal
Minister, which,
in
there's so many
2.4
cross currents
months
here because that
because
means
that's
that
going to
maybe
give
somebody
us
else could,
a
and
small time
the market
frame
wouldn't necessarily
before
know.
the
So
deadlines
what happens
in,
with
let's
sterling,
say,
given that there's also the
the
Bank of
ending of
England
the
at play
summer.
there?
Yeah,
Japan is
again, they're
preparing
to a
to
very
approve
confused
its
situation. We
first
have had
cryptocurrency
for a long time
exchange
now. I think a very
traded
difficult
funds,
political situation in the UK. I mean,
ETFs,
Keir
as early
Starmer
as
won with
2028.
landslide victory,
So
and
what does that
it's kind of
mean?
been going
Business
downhill ever
partnership.
since.
We already see
He hasn't,
the following
presented a good picture,
move,
neither
and that one's going to
domestically
be the
nor
biggest one.
externally. I mean, he did
Nikkei Asia
show some
reported
backbone
on
earlier
Sunday
this week or last week when it came to Greenland
by
and remarks
allowing
by Donald Trump, but generally speaking, he's perceived to be very weak.
the,
So that's not doing
by
any good for the
allowing
economy, the
the
fiscal policy
Japanese
situation, the
government
budget, all
hopes
that's
to
weighing
integrate
on growth
digital
prospects, on the labor
assets
market.
into the
The
country's
BOE,
financial market.
obviously in a tight
It
spot,
was
weakening labor
alleged.
market, too high inflation.
The
So I
Financial
don't think
Services
there's any real
Agency,
upside for sterling from here
FSA,
onwards.
will
Sonia, is it
reportedly
possible to have
reclassify
targets in an environment like this
cryptocurrency
where,
under
a tariff risk
financial
goes away one
securities
week,
law
but then a different
to
tariff
make it
threat
more
comes
accessible
along over the
to
weekend?
investors?
Yeah, I think that's the big problem
The
that we all
first
have. I mean,
prospective
as I said earlier, the
ETFs
weeks, the
will
months,
likely
the
be
year is not very
issued
old, but it
by
feels much older. And
Nomura
we've had
Holdings
such
Incorporated
turbulences already, and I think we
and
have to just face the fact that Donald
SBI
Trump is
Shinsei
entirely
Bank
unpredictable.
Limited.
I don't think he knows himself what he's going to do the next day.
Ethereum
So to be
over the
honest,
United States
that's
dollar
going to stay with us. That is
stands
not
in
going
the
to change. He's still going to be in office for another 3 years, and I think that volatility will not entirely go away. So it's just a matter of keeping an eye out on things and
against
just
the
being ready
US
to adjust
spot
at any
dollar
time.
stands
Yeah, absolutely,
in the
Sonia.
green
Thank you so much.
1.06%,
Sonia Martin of DZ Bank.
87,000
Now to other top stories trending on the terminal this morning. Amsterdam-linked CVC has agreed to buy U.S.
says
credit manager Marathon Asset
XAI
Management.
building
The deal is a cash and equity
AI
transaction
tech.
with a base consideration valued at as much as $1.2 billion. The acquisition is part of
Or
CVC's efforts to grow its
rephrase that.
footprint in
Musk
U.S.
says
credit markets.
XAI building for you AI tech.
Franklin Templeton
Yes,
is
they did.
folding its
They put
European
a
private
horrible
credit unit,
picture. I need to
Alcentra,
see
into its U.S. counterpart, Benefit Street Partners. The combined businesses, operating under the Benefit Street Partners title, will oversee roughly
Dios lo
$86
bendiga.
billion in assets.
Yo, it's your birthday the whole month. Ya lo sabe.
Columbia University named University of Wisconsin-Madison Chancellor Jennifer
World's
Newcomb as
richest
its
man
next president.
next to me,
She will be
Elon
Columbia's
Musk,
fourth leader
said
since
that his company
2023.
XAI is
Columbia launched its
developing
presidential
new
search in
for
the
you
spring
tabs
after a period of leadership
designed
turmoil that began
for
when
specific
pro-Palestinian
subjects.
protests swept the school. Mnuchin will take
He
the helm
explained
July
that
1st.
one version called For
Coming up,
You
shutdown
AI
risk looming as
would
Democrats threaten to
highlight
block funds to Homeland
only
Security
artificial
as tensions
intelligence
flare
content
further in Minneapolis.
without
This is
political
Bloomberg.
material. Musk described the project as a way to create automatic follow lists with posts ranked by quality. The company has not given a launch date for the new feature.
American citizens that is traumatizing little boys and girls all across the country in violation of the law. Democrats are
Okay,
not going
as
to
of
vote
the
to fund
23rd.
this version of the Department of Homeland Security.
Tracking Cruz
The risk of
issue
a partial government
approach
shutdown rising now as
with
Senate
withdrawals
Republicans plan
on
to
Ethereum.
reject Democratic demands to
Cryptocurrency
split
exchange
off
breaking.
funding for the Department of
No,
Homeland
Kraken
Security.
announced
That's after a
in
second
a notice
killing
on
of a
Friday
U.S. citizen in
that
Minneapolis.
it is
House Majority
investigating
Leader
an
Steve
issue
Scalise
related
spoke to
to
CBS on
withdrawals on
Sunday, saying,
Ethereum.
quote, Minneapolis has its own problems,
Withdrawals
failed
on
leadership
Ethereum
that has
are
led to all of
currently
this.
available
Failed leaders
for
need to look
the
in the mirror
filing.
and tone it
X
down.
stock
Now more than
assets.
60 CEOs of Minnesota-based companies are calling for an immediate de-escalation of tensions between state, local, and federal authorities. Joining us now from Washington is Bloomberg's Kasia Kinsminska. Kasia, is there any hope of de-escalation? Who would make the first move? Because right now, at least in Congress, it's only escalation that I'm seeing.
Craig
Hello,
detailed.
indeed, very difficult
The
situation. And
company
here
shared
we see the bottom
that
line
its teams
is
are
that the
working
risk of a
on
partial
identifying
federal
and
government
resolving the
shutdown is
problem,
increasing
adding
significantly
that
because
an update will be
Democrats said they will
provided
not
soon.
fund the Department of Homeland Security. That's the department that
Toyota
sent
recalls
federal
around
agents to Minnesota. Both
162,000
Democrats and actually
vehicles
some
in the
Republicans
United States.
demand a thorough
Toyota Motor
investigation of
Corporation
what happened
announced
over
on
the weekend.
Friday
But Democrats also
that
say
it
they
is
will not
recording
let any more money
approximately
go to the Department of Homeland Security, and they
162,000
do have
units
significant
in the
leverage
United
because
States
by the end of this
over
week,
faulty
Senate
display
has to
screens.
pass a funding bill. Otherwise,
According to a
not only
statement from
DHS but
Toyota,
also
the car
Pentagon,
maker
the
is
Labor
recalling
Department, the Health
certain
Department will not have
2024
money to
to 2025
operate, and so
Toyota
we have
Tundra
this risk
and
that
Tundra
Congress will not
hybrid models.
find a solution because
Since in
Republicans at
some
the same time
situations,
insist
the
on passing the
multimedia
bill
display
that the House has
may
already
become
passed
locked
last
on
week. So House
a camera
interestingly voted on
or
the
show a
funding
black
measure
image,
last Thursday and then
failing to meet
left the
a
town. So
federal
they aren't
safety
even here
standard.
if the Senate was to make any changes to the legislation.
Yeah,
Furthermore,
it's
the
so
company
complicated.
added
In the
that
meantime,
owners
President
will
Trump
be
has a
notified
new
about
tariff threat
this
out there, and
issue
he's threatening
by
Canada
late
again if it
March.
does a China
Toyota
deal.
Motor
Can you give
Corporation
us
stands
more
in the red
details
with
on
a
that?
range of
Because it seems like
0.27%,
Canada has already moved on to India at this
and
point.
67 cents a share.
President Trump issued
You know
a
what I
new
realized
threat of
based on what they're talking
100%
about with
tariffs
this
on
issue?
all goods from
When I
Canada
first started my
because he
technology
believes that if
company,
Canada goes
the
ahead
first versions
with
of
a
Radar
thorough
Flex
trade
used
agreement
this
with China,
technology.
then China will just
This
dump
lets me
his
know
stuff in
how
Canada
that
and it will
change
find its
has
way
been
into the US.
implemented.
So also
So the
Treasury
life
Secretary
cycle
Scott Bessent
of that
reiterated
system was
this
about 8
threat on
years.
Sunday,
And
saying that Canada is changing its
out
posture
of the
here. It
9
used to be
years that we
with
have
the
in
US and
business,
with
just
the
as far
European
as me
Union
being
trying
the
to
owner by
block
myself,
the flow of cheap Chinese goods, but now they're
you can
letting
see that
them in.
90%
This
of
all
the
happened,
time
of course,
was
after
focused on
Canada
Radar
Prime
Flex
Minister
the
Mark
entire
Carney
time. So the
gave a
development
speech
has been
in Davos in which
next
he
level
warned
phenomenal. So
against
I just want
the
to thank the
coercion
Heavenly
by
Father
superpowers. It's clear that
in the
President Trump
presence of all of you.
didn't like the speech,
All right,
and
let us continue.
after those
Meta
remarks, he changed his
pauses
tones and
T9
issued
says
those
to its
threats.
AI characters.
And of
That
course, Mark
module we
Carney is
did,
dealing with
and that module
Ottawa
we did. So
and
we're pretty
Quebec
good on that.
and so
Let's
on
get
as well.
back
He
out.
has domestic
Go
issues to think about
to
here too. But I'm curious, will Canada
oh,
continue
wait
to
a
make these
minute.
bilateral deals? I mean, it looks like at the moment
Yo,
they're in the middle of
home
making a deal
run.
with
This is
India.
going straight
Indeed, so it's
to
clear that in the light of the
corporate.
uncertainty
Time out.
coming out of the US and this constant
This is
change
what I'm
of tone and
talking
new
about
threats,
right here,
Canada
baby.
is looking elsewhere, so
This
it's
is
building
what I'm
ties
talking
not only
about
with
right
China,
here.
but also with India. And to be fair,
This is what
the
I'm
deal
talking
with
about
India
right here. Okay,
the deal
one
with
quick
China
second.
is relatively narrow. It's not a comprehensive free
I
trade
have to.
agreement. It's just an understanding that the
I'm
two
gonna
countries
put my
reach to
Koenigsegg
kind
back
of
up
renew
for
the flow
sale.
of some goods.
I
So
got a carbon
Canada indeed would
Koenigsegg with
let
a
a
yellow
certain
gold stripe.
relatively small amount of Chinese
And
cars in, and in return, China would buy
let's
some of
talk
the Canadian agricultural
Christmas.
goods.
Kasha,
Hit me up
a
on my
new
neck,
week in Washington. Always
504-202.
interesting. Bloomberg's Kasha Commissions
5915.
coming up, a big week in markets.
We'll
A Fed
put it
decision
on
and
the
tech
sales block
earnings still
for
on deck.
11
Your week
minutes.
ahead next. This is Bloomberg.
10 minutes starting now. Let's go. Whoa, man, that's excellent news right there. Koenigsegg is online.
This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Molly Quinn in New York. Now a look at what's ahead this week. And boy, is there a lot. We have that Fed rate decision coming on Wednesday, obviously. We also get earnings from Meta, Microsoft, and Tesla. Three of the big ones, and that's also on Wednesday. And then we get Apple results on Thursday.
Major.
All right, let's take a look at some movers pre-market. We have Revolution Medicines moving with Starting Wall Street Journal reporting that Merck is no longer interested in talks to acquire the biotech firm down with 22%. USA Rare Earths, well, this is up with 40% earlier. The Financial Times is reporting the Trump administration is planning to invest $1.6 billion into the mining company. Now, we'd heard about this before for USA Rare Earths, critical metals, and so on, but you know, we have to wait until it's obviously made official, and then you have to wonder if that's going to be a sell the news event. And then of course you have mining companies just rallying today across the board. Newmont mining up 4.5%. Plenty of others
Executive
also
branch,
rallying.
you guys
Gold
have
has
it. There's
surpassed
no excuse.
$5,000, almost at $5,100 an ounce. Silver also rallying, as are other metals. Let's take a look at the macro environment now, because the futures pointed lower. We're off our lows of the session, but some risks emerging over the weekend. Once again, the tariff on Canada risk, the partial shutdown risk, the winter
storm aftermath risk. Plenty of them out there. Let us go. Look, we're only $8 away from $5,100 an ounce. The 10-year yield, though, at 4.20, so all pretty calm. On the treasury front. Let's talk about the currencies, because you really want to be watching the yen today and also the Swiss franc.
You got to be organized. You got
to move. 5 big figure moves since Friday. We're above 159. We're now below 154. The market is definitely anticipating intervention, or at least believing that intervention will come if things get worse for the yen. The Haiti trade is alive well in the Swiss franc, and that's got to be causing the S&P some concern. And with all of that, the US dollar down 0.4% versus a basket of currencies. That debasement trade potentially back on, but it's also, of course, the mirror image of all of these strengthening trades, these haven trades. Sterling also a little stronger today as well after the Andy Burnham threat to Starmer has maybe gone away for the moment, but of course that opens up the potential for other threats.
Mr. J.O., I got you.
That we want to be watching in today's trading. We also have natural gas as well. Just a few hours ago, the front-month contract opened up another 17%. A huge threat here, at least to prompt delivery, right? So the second-month contract and the third-month contract, they're not rising as much, but it's at the highest now since 2022. All right, that is it for Bloomberg Brief. The surveillance is next.
Top of the afternoon, Mr. Josh. I'm about to make the announcement right now on live. I'll have further details for you later today. Let me get a hold of the rest of the squad. God is good. This is excellent news. So when you read it, tell me what you think. Holla back.
I was out for a motorcycle ride in Daytona Beach when a reckless driver slammed right into me. Thankfully, I called attorney Dan. He got. Thanks, Dan.
Buenos días, Rami. ¿Cómo estás? Oye, una de las compañías inversionistas acaba de aplicar para la licencia que tiene que ver con todo lo que es digital. Entonces nosotros estamos tratando de ganar ese acuerdo y ese contrato que sea una inspección pequeña. Pero yo te voy a dar más información en la noche de que yo proceso todo. Porque yo te diga con un día bacano y cualquier vaina tú me lo mandas.
Futures rise, stocks goes in on yet another record. The Fed speakers are continuing with Bowman and Kashkari at the White House prepares to hit China with new tariffs. We begin with the big issue. Looking ahead to the US CPI. CPI next week, if it was to miss or to be, it could really change the narrative over the next couple of weeks. But right now, we're just kind of picking out big noise. So when Fed officials come out right now, the next meeting, June 12th, is kind of big as a cake. So we all know that there will be a lot more data before the meeting after that. Mike McKee is with me. We're tracking the Fed speak. I want to just be a reissuance
corporate
of the San Francisco
in real
Fed
time.
yesterday. They're all
Shout out to everybody. Managers Playbook,
like a choir that sings in
Marisa Farid,
harmony.
shout out to Dean.
I do have
Everybody
some good news for you,
that is
man.
working
For
behind the
everybody out
scenes,
there as
the
well.
30
You could take
executives,
Thursday and Friday of next week off because the data
all the
really
people
won't matter.
that
But you
may
gotta
not
be
get
there on Tuesday and
their
Wednesday
flowers, you know what I'm saying?
PPI
Let's just say
on
thank you to
Tuesday
everybody
and Jay
and let's
Powell
put out that
speaks
good,
on Tuesday.
clean energy, that
Wednesday, the
positive vibe.
CPI and retail sales.
BlackRock
Now, the
files
interesting thing about the
for
CPI
Bitcoin
is that it is supposed
BlackRock
to go
Incorporated
down.
has
You see
filed
the
an
red lines there, that's
application
the forecast.
with the United
It went
States
up in the last
Securities
couple of
and
months, and
Exchange
that worried
Commission,
a lot of people. If
SEC,
it goes down, that could
for
reassure
a
the Fed
new
that we are headed
iShares
in the right
Bitcoin
direction.
premium
Won't mean they
income
will change rates
exchange
immediately,
traded fund
but it will get them
ETF.
back on track and
The
maybe
document
change the
submitted
conversation
on January
on Wall Street in Washington
and
too.
made public
Then
on Monday
we also
showed
have PPI
if
and retail
approved,
sales,
such an
which will
ETF
matter to the markets.
fund
PPI, we want to see the
would
same
use
thing in
a
going down. But
so-called
retail sales
covered
expected to
call
drop off
strategy,
significantly. There's
offering
an Easter
call-out
seasonal
on
in
the
there. If that
$70
doesn't
billion
happen and we have strong
of
retail sales,
iShares
and some
Bitcoin
analysts think
Trust,
we will, then that would also change
so
the narrative and
IBIT
put a lot of
ticker
competing
symbol,
ideas out there.
T-plus
Before we
income.
get there, though, we got to get
It
through
would
today,
also allow
Friday. There's only
investors
one number that
to
really
trade
matters,
with
and that's the
Bitcoin
University of
in
Michigan.
a
And we
less
know sentiment is
risky
down, but
environment.
what we're watching is the
Equity
inflation
premium income
expectations numbers.
ETFs
Now the problem is everybody watches those. The
with
Fed makes a big
options,
deal out of it. But
strategies,
as you can see,
in an effort
this
to
is
produce
inflation
additional
the
income
year after
and make
the
more
Michigan
volatile
numbers.
market
And
conditions.
folks, after about
BlackRock
2010, stopped getting it right. They
would
missed the fact that
trade
inflation was going way
through
down, and they
iShares,
missed the fact that inflation was
the
going way
company's
up.
collection
So we're not sure how much it
of
tells us,
ETFs
but as
and
long as it tells
index
the
mutual
Fed
funds.
something and they
So
care,
BlackRock
we're going
will
to care.
process
And
the
you guys stay
payments a
around.
little
You
bit
can't head
different
out for your
based
weekend
on
until
different
after that's over at
divisions.
10 o'clock.
I guess
Okay,
for
well, that's that
the
for that, and then we
options
can
is going to be
perhaps leave
iShares.
for
I don't
the
know
day.
why they're
Good
choosing
win
to do that,
by the day,
but
John.
we
Mike,
can
thank you very
always
much.
learn and
Let's
do some
continue
more
the conversation.
research
My
and
guest
try to
is
understand
not the purpose
where's the
of
business
tobacco
mentality,
and
because
of
you all
dope
have to
of
understand
Right.
we're trying to make
Writes
these
this.
business
The upward
deals
drift
happen.
in equities
These
is
are the
likely to
people that we
continue.
need
The
to,
Fed is in a
you know,
tweaking cycle,
appeal to,
not a
so
cutting
that they
cycle.
say, you know
That
what,
means lower
this investment
volatility, which
from
by
JPM
extension
Investments Fund
reduces equity
LLC
market volatility.
2027
Good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you. Miss Purvis,
is
good
the
morning.
one.
Bob,
Let's
so we're
just
on a
sign
three-week
off.
rally.
Let's give them a line of credit in
Sniffed out this
advance.
5,200
Let them
level
go
again. We're
crazy
inches
and
away
wild
from
for a
another
little bit.
record.
Let's
You
see what
share
they
the
put
bullish
together.
list.
Let's
Michael,
give
good
them 2
morning.
or
You
3
first.
years, 4 years as an example, even 2 years, because we already identified we're going to satisfy whatever that loan is in the next 24 months. Why? Because we're planning to pay it from 0 to 24 months, even if the terms are 36 months, 48 months, 60 months, 72 months, for example. So I want my students to tell me, what is your perspective on that? What do you guys think about that?
We did, of course, have an important
BlackRock Incorporated
series of Fed meetings, and there's
stands
one around the
in the
corner.
green,
As well, but I
0.16%.
think what's important here is that the big move here over the last few months is that the 7 cuts got repriced to 1. Maybe it's now
Ethereum
more like
and
2.
Bitcoin, we
We'll
already
see
said,
here, but it
both
really
respectively in the
doesn't
green,
really impact that.
3.27%, 1.16 for
Whatever's coming out of
Bitcoin,
the Fed is going to be much more minor
87,574
adjustments
even
at
in
this
holding.
point here, right? I think there's a more interesting
Micro
story in the back
strategy,
end of the
another
curve.
home run, yo.
There with term
Wow.
premium that I
2
think is
for
an
2.
important discussion
Time out.
topic.
This is
There
going
so
to
far we haven't
corporate.
really seen much term premium built into
This is how you run
whatever rise in the back end yields we've seen there. But
an
it's
investment
important
fund.
to
This is
step
how you
back
run a
and look, we're
business. This is
through
how
the
you run a
earnings
company.
season. We are
Very,
through
very good. Now,
key a series of
send
key Fed
this
meetings
to the
and some
peanut gallery.
repricing
Let's see what they do
along
with
the curve. There's
Let's
not
see
a
if
lot
they
of near-term
understand.
catalysts here. That's why I sort of said sell
I've been
vol in
holding
May,
it
go
down
away, not necessarily
like
sell
mine.
equities in
Okay.
May there. But I think I'm
MicroStrategy
expecting a lower
buys
fix here, certainly for the near term.
2,932
Write those
Bitcoin
options, take in the
for
premium, and deliver some enhancement. Bob,
264.1
good
million.
morning to you. Whenever you
MicroStrategy
cut this up, there was a
Incorporated
shift in gear
doing
and risk
business
guessing on the
as
back of,
micro,
we can debate whether it was
as
idiosyncratic
strategy,
higher on the
acquired
jobless claims. There
another
has been a shift, and that shift has been, again,
2,932
based on
Bitcoin
2 rate
for
cuts.
approximately
50 basis points of cuts
264.1
is
million
in of itself
in the
enough
week
to
between
reestablish a
January
pro-risk
20th
stance.
and
Or what
January
else was it,
25th.
Bob?
According to
Well,
the
the earnings have
company's
come through
Securities and
well
Exchange
also. I
Commission
think we have to
SEC
comment
filing
that those first
released
quarter
on Monday.
numbers have been pretty good, especially
The
the
company
bottom
bought
line
Bitcoin
revenues a
at
little
an
bit
average
more
price
mixed.
of
And that's
approximately
my concern. The big hook up
90,061,
in earnings expected by the
Bitcoin,
consensus in the second
which
half.
includes fees and
Double-digit earnings
expenses.
growth this year, double-digit
After
earnings
this
growth next
purchase,
year. All in the
MicroStrategy
backdrop
and
of
its subsidiaries
consumer,
currently
particularly the
hold
lower end, that's showing some signs of wear and tear. So the figure of
747
this
Bitcoin
recovery off that May correction
by
has
the
been
grace of God.
surprising to me, and I think we'll have more turmoil as we go on.
Bob, do you think more
Acquired
term
at
for
an
the consumer?
aggregate price
I'll
of
throw these names at you.
approximately
Use them all week.
54.19
Starbucks,
billion,
Uber,
or around
Airbnb.
76,037
I could go
per
on, but
Bitcoin.
there is
So for my students,
undoubtedly
what is the
some
hidden
pressure
cost?
on the
If we know
consumer.
right now the market is closing
I
below
agree, and if you go to the macro
88,000,
data, when you look at
and
lower end
average price,
consumers,
spot price
they're
was
beginning to struggle.
90,061.
Are the
The
incomes
real
enough?
fees and the real penalties were about $2,000, which is not bad when you're considering that you're in the profit zone from 54.19 billion and up. So at 76,000 a coin, you're still up 12,000. So we could pay the $2,000 or $3,000 fee because we're still up 8, 9, 10,000, depending how the market closes. Another thing I want my students to understand is Bitcoin is about access when you need to do business. So it's going to have a different value each time.
we
You're
both
going to have a
all three of us
different,
need to accept that there is a
I
massive
guess,
wealth gap,
propensity
and that
or
wealth gap
classification every
is
single
becoming
time. So
even
this just gives you an
more
example.
apparent, and I would say it's becoming even more apparent
Strategy
in this
stock
data and
dropped
in these
by
results. Here to debate
2.04%.
perhaps the wealth
during
gap today. I
pre-market
do want to
trading
understand,
after
Michael,
the
from you.
announcement.
You talk about camping
So
out. You've reflected
MicroStrategy
on periods
stands
gone
in
by
red,
when the Fed has camped out for a long and enduring period of time. Here we are. The market is repriced to rate cuts.
Yeah,
So the rate
99.0.
camp, they may be packing up the tents soon.
We already
We go to
did
June,
this,
we've got PPI
Japan,
and CPI next
we
week,
did that
then we float
module.
into June. When do you think the Fed wraps up the
The
tents and
20th, we
moves
did
out
that
of
module
the
as well.
camping
Okay,
out
and
zone
we'll
on
go
rate
back
cuts?
all the way to
Yeah, just to clarify,
December,
what I mean by camping out.
MicroStrategy, this is as of
in
the
the note
20th.
is the work they're doing is
MicroStrategy
really
buys
that when the Fed got to terminal, that it
22,305
would just kind of
Bitcoin.
stay there, and it would stay there
2.1
because the inflation dynamics are so
MicroStrategy
complicated in this
Incorporated,
cycle.
doing
There's so
business
many new
as
forces
strategy,
that are coming. There's so many.
disclosed that it acquired
it's sort of
another
a mix up of
22,305
deflationary and new structural inflationary forces
Bitcoins
all colliding
for
at once.
$2.1 billion
And with that
cash
backdrop, the Fed
between
needs as much
January 12th
optionality as
and
it
the
can.
19th. At an average
Well, the
price
Fed
of
is usually in motion, right? They're usually,
95,284 per Bitcoin.
increasing or decreasing
A
their policy
Securities and
rates
Exchange
more than they're
Commission
doing nothing.
SEC filing showed
This
on
was a
Tuesday.
period.
So for my student,
that,
now
when we got to
give me
terminal
a
last summer,
third
that we
example.
would really just.
What was the hidden
It
fee
was
if
my
it's closing
expectation
out
that
at
we would stay here for a very long period of time.
87,750 and they
There.
were
So that
purchasing
said, I do think that,
95,000?
look,
This
could
fee was
we-
much
could we get
higher,
a cut or
8
two?
to 9,000,
Absolutely.
which is
There,
the opposite.
particularly if what
It's
Bob
what
is
we
saying,
have
if we start
in the
seeing,
profit
some
margin range,
more
but
erosion
now becomes
in the
a
lower end
liability as well.
consumer on their economic sustainability there, particularly with still robust
Okay.
gasoline and food prices
According to the company's
there.
filing, the transaction was
what
financed
drives
with
the Fed
proceeds
to
from the sale of shares
into a proper cutting cycle?
of
It's got to be
under
something
its
that
at-the-market
is
offering program.
a very major economic contraction. You're going to have to see unemployment back up at the high
Strategy
fours, I
stressed
think.
it sold
You're going to have to see
$10,399,650
PMIs down, not the high 40s, but the low 40s or 30s. Real economic contraction.
Class A
There's no
common
reason
stock
why
last week
this economy,
for
if
$1.8
I'm
billion,
even just partially right that we're going into some
as
sort
well
of
as
newer, higher nominal GDP regime, that if we are going to do that, that we should be able to
Strategy
sustain
Incorporated
higher
variable
positive
rate
real rates as we
Series
have in
8
so many cycles before.
perpetual
Just
stretch
wasn't in the cycle we just did in a
preferred
few
shares
years leading up to
for
COVID. Where you had, we all got
294
an emerge of very low
and
nominal
strategy
real interest rates and this sort of
8.00%.
low inflation narrative. I just don't think we're
Series
normalizing
A
back to that. I've been
perpetual
maintaining for
strike
some time that we're maintaining.
preferred
We're
stock
normalizing to something
for
different than that.
3.4
Well, we've
million.
been through a heck of a lot, haven't we, in the past 10 days, from the
Strategy
ECI, the
stated
convulsing of the
that as of
ECI, to the
January
relief that
19th,
you got from the jobs
its
reports,
total
to
Bitcoin
a number
holdings
of other sort of
stood at
as economic surprises are also disappointing if you
715
look at that.
Bitcoins.
I want to just throw this
The
at both of you.
aggregate
This is from
purchase
Stephen
cost
Major, the most
for the
latest notes.
asset
I want to get your
is
perspective on the
approximately
bond market. We
53.9
restore
billion,
our conviction,
with an
we
average
restore a
price
bullish
of
conviction on US Treasuries for this month's asset allocation, because valuations versus, and here's the kicker,
including
gentlemen,
fees and
versus the
expenses.
rest of the world. So
Strategy
Stephen has
Incorporated
raised his bond
stands in the
target
red,
to 3.5 from 3, so there's an incremental move, but
1.51%.
again, bullish on bonds, and this is the top line. So
160.64.
again, Bob, here we are. We saw my word of the
Now,
week has been recalibration in
continue.
rates from the
Let me
start of
see
the
if
week
there's
to
any
over the past 10 days.
Developments here, no.
If these incremental
Developments
slowdown
here, no.
in data continue, is that enough in itself
Did we do this? This is
to
once
re-enter
again
bonds? Bob?
another home run. Royal
Yes,
flush. This is
in
going to
part at
corporate
least,
right
we've already
now.
seen some relief in the bond
Oh my
market.
God,
on
that's a
some of
royal
the things you
flush
just
on
mentioned.
all
I
spectrums of the
suspect we'll
market.
get some more of that, and
Thank
if
you,
the
Heavenly Father. That's what we
slowdown
need
that
right there.
I think we're
That's
beginning
what
to
we need.
see in the
Blessings
consumer
upon blessings.
unfolds
Okay,
some more.
this
Yes,
is
we'll
done,
get more
complete,
rallying
let's
bonds,
go.
and those rates should
Now
come.
let's send this over
Michael, I
to
mean, we know Stephen
my
Major
executive
is a
board
bond bull. He's still at 3.5% for the end of
see
the
what they
year,
do
so
with
he's
this,
not
right?
throwing
Very
in the
nice.
towel on where we go.
So
I
here
think
we
it's
go,
about
ladies and
timing, and
gentlemen.
it's about
Silver
understanding
up
the timing of the
12%.
Fed and the slowdown,
To
the
new
potential
all-time
slowdown,
high
which it
of
feels like there is a mini impact of the
$115.
long
Silver
variable
hit
line.
another
Does
record
that
high
build the
on
case for you? If you want to sell
growing
vol,
over
I'm
12%
curious to know, is that all
to
vol,
as
or would you
much as
consider selling some bond volatility as
$115
well?
per ounce.
Well, look, we've had very elevated
Man,
bond
markets
volatility.
remain focused on
First through
geopolitical
an
uncertainty.
unbelievably
After the United
aggressive
States
high
President
velocity
Donald
hiking
Trump
cycle,
threatened
which started
Canada
2 years ago, and
with
then
100%
we had
tariffs
some sort of term
if
premium
it
related
finalizes a trade deal with China.
bond volatility last summer,
While
last fall.
renewed attention
I do
on
think, as I mentioned, that if we're going into a
and
peaking cycle,
green
bond vol
security.
should fall.
Added to
There's one big
investors'
caveat
caution.
here, and this gets back to
Attention
Steve's
is also
Major's
turning
question
to the
about
Federal Reserve
buying
ahead of
the
its
back end of the curve
upcoming
right
meeting,
now. And I
as
think it's
Trump
an
prepares to
under-discussed
name
topic,
a
but
new
the
Fed
elections are
chair.
less than 6 months away right now.
Silver
And
rose
I
by
think when you consider
12.48%
that,
at
while
12:16 a.m.
inflation has
Eastern
been
time to
the Biden
trade
campaign's
at
Achilles heel,
$115
I don't see
and
much
8 cents
policy
per
being
ounce,
articulated at either
while
side
gold
that's going
increased
to aggressively
2.22%
say this is how we
to
whip inflation, right? There. I mean, people,
5,093.35 per
people,
ounce.
Trump will talk about it, right?
Platinum
But
was up
if anything, you see the
2.96%
policies that
at
from the Trump side so far have been more incrementally inflationary
852.3
than from the Biden
and
side, you have
Canadian
tariffs
jumped
and having a
6.07%
much more aggressive view
to
on the immigration situation, right? So those are both marginally
2,138.23
inflationary
at the same
here.
time.
And so I think given that the term premium, which got to 45 basis
Microsoft
points
Silver.
from Fed's
We're going to go
ACM
to the
model
module
last
before that.
October,
That was 8
we're at
hours before.
basically zero right now.
Silver reaches
So all the
new
increase in
all-time
yields in the
high
back of
of
the curve
110.
have been driven by other
So we
factors,
continue
right?
paying
Really
ground
more about Fed
on Monday,
repricing
hitting
the
a fresh
Fed's
record
interest rate
high of 110
situation
pounds.
this year.
The recent
If we
surge
start
in
building a
safe
term premium
investments
here, and maybe
was
that
partly
happens as we
motivated
get closer to
by
the election,
geopolitical turmoil
and people start
and
realizing
worries
that,
about the
what I think
state
the
of
real story is not
the United
what do
States
equities
economy,
do in November,
as
but
well
what
as
do bonds do
uncertainty
in November. And I
surrounding the
think
course
that's where I would
of
take issue with
the Federal
with Steve.
Reserve's
Well, we're going
monetary
to have, let's
policy
just react to that. We're going to
and
have
the
a
central
lot
bank's
more discussion, I would say,
Silver soared
from Trump, etc., around the Inflation
7.39%
Reduction Act, around the
at
CHIPS Act, around the spend, fiscal
4:36
spend
a.m.
from
Eastern
this
time,
current administration.
going
And as
for
you say, Michael, it could well be
$109.88 per
more
ounce.
discussion around
The
immigration. They're
precious
going to be very
metal was up
pressing issues as we go to the election.
53.7%
But with that in mind,
since the start of the
if the
year.
left tail risk of a rate hike
Gold
is being
gained
perhaps closed off
2.27%
by Powell,
at
maybe we need to
4:39 a.m.
refocus on the left tail
Eastern
risk,
time
which is fiscal.
and went
Fiscal
for
came to bite us in the proverbial in last autumn. Is that the left tail risk that takes you back to 5% on 10-year government bond yields between now
4.2% to
and the
go
election or
for
just after?
It very well happened. I think we
$2,889.67 per
pointed
ounce,
out a little
while
discussion
palladium
on
at
policy we've had. I
2.61%
hope we have
and
more discussion
Brent
in the next 6
for
months, but there's a chance there's not a
$2,067.78 per
whole
ounce.
bunch more.
So for my students, I want you guys to
we
compare
know
this
the
to a
fiscal
theory.
situation is not
So we got
tenable
platinum,
long-term.
almost
And if,
3,000, palladium is
that is the
22, or
country
close to
doesn't do anything
22.
about it, the bond vigilantes will come
Gold
along
is
at some
almost
point
51,
and hit us over the
5,200.
head.
Silver,
We cannot sustain this
115. I'm
policy
so
and
proud of
expect
silver. Look at
rates
that.
to
In the
stay
green,
in the current place.
12.62%.
And you put some tariffs
It's
on
too easy.
there.
It's too easy.
You put
Gold,
reasonable
values,
economic growth and the
2.5%.
path
Tops,
for
5,100.
interest rates will turn back up if we don't get
We
economic
were just
weakness.
talking about.
Yeah, we just need to
Let's
get a
send this to
quant model
corporate,
in
give me one
place
quick second.
to do the equal and opposite of the trust moment,
And
this
is
trust
a home
cozy
run.
time moment in the US bond market.
This
I know
is
it's
a home
deep,
run.
I know it's liquid, I know it's a different market, but I'll just put it out there from an Irishman to Americans. Good morning, Michael Purvis
All right.
and Bob
So here we go.
thank you for
Gold,
joining me.
values,
Let's look under the stocks.
2.5%.
We know that these
Tops,
chips are big. Abigail do little ticks through the moods.
5,100.
Abby.
It's not just chips that
Precious
are bid. Let's take a look at the
metals
shares of
prices
Novavax.
rallied on Monday.
Extraordinarily bid. This
Gold
stuff
jumping
in the pre-market
almost
up more than 100%
2.5%.
at the pre-market
And
highs, up
breaking
more than
through
200%. This on the news, of course, that
5,100
Sanofi is making a $1.2 billion
Shortly after hitting
vaccine
5,000
licensing
pounds
deal. They
for the
will
first
receive
time.
$500 million
Gold
upfront,
prices
$700 million
were fueled
if
by
all the development,
ongoing
regulatory, and launch
geopolitical
milestones are
tensions
met. In addition,
over the
Sanofi
United
is taking a
States
5% stake
Donald
in
Trump
Novavax.
recently
So very
announced
good news for those
a framework
investors in that
agreement
company.
on
Nvidia,
the
there
future
is one of those
agreement
chips you're talking
after
about, man, it's
meeting
up
with
1.3%. This is,
Secretary
of course,
General Mark
ahead of their earnings report and on the
that
heels
Northern
of
Territory is known
TSMC's
in 2
very
weeks.
strong
However,
quarter
Denmark's
sales.
Prime
Investors
Minister
playing that
Matt
forward to Nvidia. But
for
Alphabet
weeks
not so much down 1.2%.
insisted
Reuters is
does not
reporting
have a
that
mandate
Microsoft-backed
to
OpenAI
negotiate on
search
behalf
feature will
of
be
the country
launched
and
next Monday.
Greenland.
And of course, that could
Gold
create some sort of
surged
competition for Alphabet's own search feature, of course, the well-known Google.
per ounce.
So that NVIDIA number is going to be Philip Hill on sentiment on this
At the
earnings
same
season.
time,
Thank you
silver
very much.
soared
Coming up, Biden said to unveil new tariffs on China.
108.5.
The reality is, given the prices of the Chinese EVs and what I've seen firsthand, it would be very tough from a competition perspective. Retaliatory definitely could happen. This game of thrones continues to play out.
0.79%.
We'll talk about the impact next on the
31.89 per ounce.
There's a reason the Karate Master was the #1 salesman in the lumber department. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm.
Okay, those are the last two. So for my students, give me a comparison of the last two figures, which the difference was probably, what, 8 hours, okay? Silver up 4.6% to a new all-time high of 107. What is the difference also between the current price? The price of silver continued to gain momentum, rising 4.6% to climb to an all-time high again at 107 per ounce. Geopolitical uncertainties and increased demand for the precious metals due to its wide range of industrial applications seem to contribute to the move. On Friday, the white metal reached an important milestone, selling for $100 for the first time in history, despite the drop in tensions between the United States and Europe over Greenland in the aftermath of the World Economic Forum in Davos. The geopolitical climate remains volatile, carrying pressing investors to seek safe haven. At 7:54 p.m. Eastern Time, silver jumped 14.78%.
The retaliatory is the last thing they need from a Tesla perspective. And I think this is something everyone's been waiting for. Because the reality is, given the prices of the Chinese EVs and what I've seen firsthand, it would be very tough from a competition perspective. Retaliatory definitely could happen. This Game of Thrones continues to play out.
Right now, this is Game of Thrones. But the Biden administration is set to unveil exactly what are the new tariffs on China. That will come as soon as next week. The reports say that tariffs will target EVs, batteries, and other metals. They will not be across-the-board hikes sought by the former President Donald Trump. Joining me now is Bloomberg David Welch. David, good to see you this morning. So, look, this is as much a political message as it is an economic protective message for Team USA. What is the threat to the U.S. auto industry?
Flight to safety amid diminishing
Chinese have a huge advantage in developing the supply chain and battery technology, and all that leads to lower priced EVs that they sell in China. They're also selling them pretty successfully right now in South America. They're selling more vehicles in Mexico. So in a way, they're already on the doorstep of the United States. And if they were to sell those vehicles here, it's just a huge threat to what General Motors and Ford are trying to do. They're trying to build their EV businesses. It's also a threat to Tesla. That's a lot of jobs here. And also think about the Toyota, Honda, Hyundai plants, Nissan plants in the U.S., the Mercedes and BMW plants here. Any vehicles exported here from China threaten those jobs, and that's an awful lot of jobs in the auto sector, plus the parts beyond that. So this is a message to union voters, to non-union blue-collar voters, that the Biden administration is looking out for them and looking out for their jobs. And also it is looking, it's trying to buy time for the U.S. automakers and even Tesla to keep building up their EV businesses and lowering costs, hence lowering their vehicle prices, so they can remain competitive in the day when Chinese vehicles do get here. And I think one day they will. But we've got to get, in this country, a supply chain that can lower costs of EVs to even try to be competitive with them. And the way to forestall their advantage and put off the day that they come here is through some pretty heavy tariffs. And I think that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at Tesla's competition.
So we'll be right back on 5 minutes, okay? We'll pick up right where we left off.